The top stories. Russia's defense ministry has said that its forces have captured the village in Filia in Ukraine's Dnipropetrovsk region, even as Kyiv's top commander reported Ukrainian troops recaptured 3 villages in Donetsk, while Lavrov has stated that he has outlined the terms for Ukraine. U.S. National Guard troops in Washington, D.C. will begin carrying M17 pistols or M4 rifles from Sunday night as part of President Donald Trump's crime crackdown, with Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth authorizing the move. President Trump also suggested expanding troop deployments to Democratic-run cities like Chicago and Baltimore. Israeli strikes on Yemen's capital Sana'a has killed at least 6 and wounded 86, targeting the presidential palace, power plants, and fuel depots, according to the Houthi-run news agency. The Israeli military has said that the attacks were in response to Houthi missiles fired on Friday, with Netanyahu vowing the rebels will pay a very high price. Gaza's civil defense has reported 42 people killed in Israeli attacks on Sunday, with more than 1,000 buildings destroyed in Gaza City's Zaytun and Sabra neighborhoods this month. The local agency has warned that ongoing shelling and blocked roads have trapped hundreds under rubble and are halting rescue and aid operations. South Korean President Lee Jae-myung will hold his first U.S. summit with U.S. President Donald Trump in Washington today, a meeting seen as a pivotal test for the alliance amid tensions over defense spending, troop upkeep, and trade. Lee, who took office in June after a snap election, seeks to reaffirm ties with the U.S. while avoiding friction with China. France has summoned U.S. Ambassador Charles Kushner after his Wall Street Journal letter accused Paris of failing to combat anti-Semitism and criticizing France's stance on Israel. However, President Macron has rejected those claims and has boosted security around synagogues and Jewish centers to avoid incidents linked to the Gaza conflict. Vietnam has begun evacuating over 500,000 people and shutting airports as Typhoon Kajiki, located 150 kilometers off the central coast, threatens to strike between Thanh Hoa and Nghệ An provinces with heavy rain, flooding, and landslides. Authorities have also ordered all boats to remain ashore. Australia's Erin Patterson, who is convicted of killing 3 relatives with a death-cap mushroom-laced beef Wellington, faced victims' families in court today. For a 2-day pre-sentencing hearing, the 50-year-old was found guilty in July of murdering Don and Gail Patterson and Heather Wilkinson, while survivor Ian Wilkinson testified against her. Israel's deadly strikes in Gaza have killed at least 42 people, according to the territory's civil defense agency. The latest attacks come as the Israeli army prepares for a new assault on Gaza City, the Strip's largest urban center. Among the dead, 8 were killed in the Al-Sabra neighborhood. Heavy strikes were also reported elsewhere. Residents described the situation as extremely dangerous, saying that follows us everywhere. Israel has not commented on the figures, as media access in Gaza remains severely restricted. Israeli forces have shot dead 4 Palestinians near Gaza City. The victims were among those seeking aid when they came under fire. Meanwhile, Malaysian Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim has announced an additional 100 million ringgit in aid for Gaza. The pledge came at Mamas rally in Kuala Lumpur, where over 10,000 people gathered to show solidarity with Palestinians. Let's listen in to what the Malaysian Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim has said.
Bagi pihak kerajaan Madani, kita telah luluskan 2 tahun yang lalu 100 juta ringgit. Malam ini saya siarkan kerajaan Malaysia akan beri dana 100 juta ringgit lagi. Saya akan minta rakan-rakan dari syarikat negara kita untuk turut prihatin. Mereka telah bantu sebelum ini. Ada yang beri pelbagai bantuan. Netanyahu dan kelompoknya memang kurang siuman. Zalim. Boleh pertahankan anak-anak kecil semua Hamas. Anak 2 tahun berlari. Ini Hamas. Ini penyakit.
Meanwhile, the International Committee of the Red Cross has facilitated the release of 13 prisoners from the Kerem Shalom crossing. They were transferred to Al-Aqsa Martyrs Hospital, where they have now reunited with their families. Let's listen into what one of the prisoner and International Committee of the Red Cross spokesman has said.
من خان يونس انا مسكت قعدت شهرين في السجن، كنت في سجن اسمه سيدمان. الله يا رب ما يجعل حدا يخشه، لانه عذاب اسمه سيدمان قهر الرجال وفهمكم كفايه غير هيك ما بقدرش احكي. والله النصر بتمنى انهم يصير صفقه، لانه قرفوا حالهم في السجن، عذاب وضرب وقتل وجوع ومرض وعالجوهم مش بالمره خالص.
سهلت اليوم اللجنه الدوليه للصليب الاحمر اطلاق سراح 13 معتقلا ونقلهم من نقطة عبور كرم أبو سالم إلى مستشفى شهداء الأقصى في المحافظة الوسطى بقطاع غزة. أتاحت لهم التواصل مع أسرهم لتحديد أماكنهم ولم شملهم في نهاية المطاف.
Now for this discussion, we're joined by Ambassador Mahesh Sachdev. He's a former Indian ambassador, joins us live from New Delhi. Thank you, Ambassador, for joining us. Welcome to NewsX World. Now, what are the geopolitical implications of Israel's renewed offensive in Gaza City, especially amid rising civilian casualties?
Thank you, Ashuma. It's an important topical issue. And I think Prime Minister Netanyahu is taking a calculated risk. On one hand, he would like to achieve his objective of decimating Hamas as a political and military force. And on the other hand, he would like to also release the hostages. To this end, he has asked for additional mobilization of recruits, and a new offensive on Gaza City has been launched with predictable results in terms of civilians being collaterally damaged in large numbers and civilian buildings being destroyed. On the other hand, in case Hamas still denies him the two objectives and hostages are found to be harmed by this warfare, this would have grave repercussions within the Israeli society. Internationally too, this military campaign resumption coincides with IPC's declaration of famine conditions in Gaza Strip. So it's going to be seen as a further evidence Israeli cynical approach towards Palestinian civilians living in Gaza. Thank you.
And Ambassador, now looking at Malaysian Prime Minister's solidarity, how significant is Malaysia's increased and public solidarity with Palestinians in shaping regional responses to the Gaza conflict?
It is significant within its own context. In 2023, when Gaza conflict started, Malaysian Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim announced 100 million ringgit worth of assistance, which is about $23 million, to Gaza. And now a second equivalent installment of assistance to Gaza victims has been announced. While doing so publicly, Mr. Ibrahim has condemned Israel and has also announced that Malaysia would lead an 8-country flotilla from Spain and Tunisia with aid supplies to Gaza, direct by the Mediterranean Sea. You may note that earlier, Israeli Navy has thwarted similar flotillas going directly to Israel from Cyprus and Italy and elsewhere. So we are going to see some sort of escalation in such activities. I think the pressure would mount if evidence of greater harm due to famine and due to Israeli renewal of campaign against Gaza City comes to fore, and particularly in Islamic world, of which Malaysia is a leading member, we would see more uproar, and Israel's own international image worldwide may suffer as the UN General Assembly session begins in less than a month's time. Thank you.
Yes, indeed. Thank you very much, Ambassador Sachdev, for sharing that. Please stay with us as we stay on this topic now. Israeli bulldozers have uprooted hundreds of trees in the West Bank village of Al-Mughayir. Journalists witnessed the destruction, mostly olive trees, a key part of the local economy and culture. Farmers say trees over 70 years old were leveled, while residents call it an attempt to force them off their land. The Israeli army says it launched intensive operations in the area after shooting attack. One man from the village has been arrested, accused of carrying out a terrorist attack. Tensions in the West Bank have escalated since the war in Gaza began. Let's listen into what Ghassan Abdul Aliyah, chairman of the Al-Mughayir Agricultural Association, has said.
سهول كاملة حرثوها وتم إبادتها بشكل إجرامي. يعني الهدف منها اللي هو إزالة الحياة، إزالة ارتباط الناس بالأرض، إزالة وجود الناس بهذه الأرض، وخلق واقع جديد، وإزالة التاريخ، وإضعاف الروح المعنوية للناس وجعلهم بلا أمل.
Now we go back to our guest discussion with Ambassador Mahesh Sachdev. He's a former Indian ambassador, joins us live from New Delhi. Thank you, Ambassador, for staying with us. How do such actions impact the already fragile stability in the West Bank, especially in terms of civilian displacement?
The clip that you showed in Arabic roughly translates into the person being interviewed accusing Israel of giving rise to hopelessness and disconnection of the local population with their land, etc., etc. It's partly rhetorical, but it's also partly rooted in reality. Israel last week, if you remember, announced implementation of E1 scheme, which would physically separate East Jerusalem from the rest of the West Bank through an Israeli 3,000 housing units being built. There are similar instances of Israeli settlements being expanded, and the idea is to envision Israeli historical claim of West Bank being Judea and Samaria, to which Jews have a natural right, as they had claimed earlier on Palestine land, which became Israel. So there is enhanced activity in this regard, and accusation and counter-accusations are being hurled at each other, while the United Nations General Assembly session begins next month, and a number of European countries which was sympathetic to Israel, have announced that during the session they would recognize the state of Palestine. This has angered ultra-rightist Israeli politicians into enhancing their activities to ensure that Palestine state never gets realized. During this year, Israeli parliament has already filed and passed a resolution disallowing Palestine or two-state solution to be realized. So all that leads to certain amount of escalating events, and it's difficult to see whether this would have eventual peaceful end, or if both of the sides are looking for maximal return.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Sachdev, for sharing that. Please stay with us as we come back to you for our next discussion as well. Now, Israel has launched fresh airstrikes on the Yemeni capital Sana'a in response to Houthi missile attacks targeting Israeli territory on Friday. The Israeli military has confirmed it hit key strategic sites, including a military compound housing the presidential palace, power plants, and a fuel storage facility. Houthi officials reported 6 dead and 86 wounded. Meanwhile, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has vowed continued retaliation, warning that the Houthi terror regime would pay a heavy price. Here's what the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has said.
חיל האוויר תקף היום שוב מטרות אסטרטגיות בתימן, תקף את ארמון הנשיאות בלב הבירה צנעא, את תחנת הכוח של העיר. משטר הטרור החותי לומד בדרך הקשה שהוא ישלם ומשלם מחיר כבד מאוד על התוקפנות שלו נגד מדינת ישראל. מי שתוקף אותנו, אנחנו תוקפים אותו. מי שמתכנן לתקוף אותנו, אנחנו תוקפים אותו. אני חושב שהאזור כולו לומד את עוצמת היד והנחישות של מדינת ישראל.
Now we are joined by Ambassador Mahesh Sachdev. He's a former Indian ambassador, joins us live from New Delhi. Thank you, Ambassador, for staying with us. Now, looking at this recent attack from both sides, how might the Israeli strikes on Houthi targets in Sana'a influence the balanced power between Iran-aligned groups and US-backed allies in this region?
It's a good question. I should add that Iran relied on a set of proxies to confront Israel without having had to do so directly. Most of these proxies, such as Hamas, Hezbollah, have fallen aside. Israel has been able to vanquish them, more or less. But Houthis of Yemen have continued to be the non-state actor that are active in air war against Israel. They have been dispatching missiles to Israel and trying to destroy what they claim to be strategic targets, such as Ben Gurion Airport and Defense Ministry installations, etc. These activities have continued despite Iran-Israel having had a 12-day very destructive conflict in which Iran suffered more than what Israel has suffered. It has also continued despite Houthis and United States having come to a tacit agreement to cease hostilities. But Houthi action against Israel has continued. Israel has responded with tit-for-tat attacks against Houthis. The Sunday before last, on 17th, Israeli Navy was said to be active against the targets in Sana'a, which yesterday included the same powerhouse supplying electricity to much of Sana'a, the capital. So it has been attacked not only on 17th by Israeli Navy, it has also been attacked by Israeli Air Force yesterday. What was new in this escalation was that Sana'a
Yes.
presidential compound has also been attacked, perhaps for the first time. It is
Yes.
not known if among the 6 people killed and 82 wounded, there was some from presidential entourage. We'll perhaps come to know later.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Mahish Sachdev, for joining us today and sharing your insight throughout our news. Thank you very much. Now we move on. Iran's Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei has declared that Tehran will not bow to pressure from the United States. Speaking at a mosque in Tehran, Khamenei has accused Washington of trying to subjugate Iran. Calling the ongoing standoff with the United States unsolvable, he reaffirmed that Iran's nuclear ambitions are solely for peaceful purposes, rejecting Western claims that it seeks to develop nuclear weapons. Let's listen into what he has said.
امروز به حمدالله کشور متحده. امروز مردم متحدن. اختلاف سلیقه هست. اختلاف سلیقه سیاسی اجتماعی وجود داره. لکن در دفاع از نظام، دفاع از کشور، ایستادگی در مقابل دشمن مردم. این کسانی که تحلیل میکنن که چرا با آمریکا مذاکره مستقیم نمی کنید، مسائلتون حل نمی کنید، به نظر من ظاهر بینن. باطن قضیه این نیست. این مسئله حل نشده نیست. او میخواد که ایران گوش به فرمان آمریکا باشه. ملت ایران از چنین اهانت بزرگی به شدت رنجیده میشه.
Amid ongoing nuclear talks with European powers, Khamenei also blamed foreign efforts to sow internal discord in Iran, but asserted that the nation remains united in the face of external threats. His comments come 2 months after a brief but intense war with Israel and the U.S. further escalating tensions in the region. With talks stalled after Israeli and U.S. airstrikes on Iranian nuclear sites in June, Khamenei's remarks underscores Tehran's resolve to resist foreign demands as it faces mounting pressure over its nuclear program. Now for this discussion, we are joined by Colonel Sanjit Sirohi. He's an international relations and defense expert, joins us live from New Delhi. Thank you for joining us today. Welcome to NewsX World. Could this rhetoric be aimed more at a domestic audience by Khamenei since it was in a mosque? Could you hear me? Hello, Colonel.
Yeah, I can hear you. Can I repeat the question, please?
Yes. So I'm asking if Khamenei's speech, do you think this rhetoric was more aimed at a domestic audience than actual foreign policy escalation?
Absolutely. Firstly, thank you very much, Asuma, for inviting me at your channel and for discussing a very, very important topic. Now, what Khamenei has talked about is, I think it is you are absolutely right that it is basically for the domestic consumption. But if you see in last few days, the defense minister has also talked about Aziz Nazirazad. He has also talked about that they have made a new missile, manufactured a new missile, which is much better than the older versions, which were used during this 12 days of war between Israel and Iran. So if you look at it, although Ayatollah Khamenei, whatever he is saying is absolutely right, because if you go back in history, in 2015, when JCPOA was signed by America, European leaders and Iran, that was the time when it was decided that Iran will not be going that far for enrichment of the uranium. But in 2018, Donald Trump, in his first term, he left this program And after that, the Iranians, they started doing what they have done so far. So I think when he says it is unsolvable, it means that America at that point of time, if he had not left, Donald Trump had not left this program, then things would have been different what they are today. Now, if you see that most of the things which are happening are because when the 5 rounds of talks have been successfully conducted, before the 6th round of talk was to be conducted on 15th June, on 13th June, Israel attacked Iran. So I think there is a lack of trust between Iran, Israel, and American. That's why Mr. Khamenei is talking about that this issue is unsolvable. Asuma.
And Colonel, building on your answer, how does Ayatollah Khamenei's firm stance against the U.S. shape Iran's regional positioning at this point in time? What do you think?
Look, it is absolutely clear what Ayatollah Khamenei is talking about is that he also knows that Israel doesn't want him to stay there where he is now, and they want a regime change. Now, if Ayatollah Khamenei has to stay as the supreme leader of Iran, then he has to talk about the Iranian people, and that's why he's talking about that this is a solution which cannot be solved. And I think to some extent what he's saying is correct, as I mentioned, that although the ceasefire was conducted, but their defense ministry talking about that this ceasefire is not permanent and the war can start anytime. So there is a rhetorical statements given by both the defense minister and Ayatollah Khamenei, and the point is that it is being said that although the ceasefire is there, but how long it will last, it all depends on how Israel, America, and Iran, they come to terms as far as the nuclear testing program is concerned. Asuma.
Yes, indeed. Thank you very much, Colonel Sanjit Sirohi, for joining us today and sharing that insight throughout our news. Thank you very much. Now we move on to Ukraine and Russia. Russia's Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov has outlined Moscow's terms for a potential peace deal with Ukraine, insisting that a group of major powers, including the UN Security Council members, must guarantee Ukraine's security. Let's listen into what he has said.
Regards the security guarantees for Ukraine, those principles proposed by Ukrainian delegation, I underline this once again, they provided for creation a group of guarantors. This group containing of permanent members of the Security Council, Russia, US, China, UK, and France. Plus, they mentioned Germany, Turkey, and any other country which would be interested to join this group of guarantors. And guarantors would be guaranteeing the security of Ukraine, which must be neutral, which must be non-aligned with any military bloc, and which must be non-nuclear.
Meanwhile, in Ukraine, President Volodymyr Zelensky has attended a key defense forum on the nation's Independence Day. Alongside Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney, the meeting focused on strengthening Ukraine's defense ties with Western allies, showcasing the latest in Ukrainian military advancements. Let's listen into what President Zelensky has said during the forum.
We know each other very well, and we had so many meetings together, and I think that the result of all our meetings is understanding each other. We are very thankful for your support. We are very thankful to your nations. First of all, we are very thankful to your leaders, governments, and to yourself. Thank you so much for your long-term support for Ukraine.
Now for this discussion, we're joined by Daniel Boardman. He's a senior correspondent for the National Telegraph, joins us live from Toronto. Thank you, Daniel, for joining us. Welcome to NewsX World. How realistic do you think are Russia's, specifically Lavrov's, proposed terms for a peace deal?
Well, they're certainly interesting, and it is a sign of progress in some way. Now, how much can you really trust the Russians that they mean what they say they mean, and what's the hidden message underneath this? But with a peacekeeping presence that is made up of American, British, French, and potentially, Turkish and German soldiers is rather promising. Having a defense force in charge of Ukraine's security run by Russia and China is concerning if you're the Ukrainians. So this is probably the current sticking issue that needs to be ironed out. It's definitely a start. I mean, this is a sign that Russia is capitulating, and I think Russia is now I think Russia is starting to see the writing on the wall with this war. They have really failed to make any significant gains in Ukraine. I think it was like by November 2023 or by the beginning of the war, they had taken around 18% of Ukraine, and over 3 years they've managed to get to 19% of territorial Ukraine. So the Russian losses bleeding out manpower are one thing. You also have the Ukrainians now going after Russian infrastructure and their ability to expand their targeting. And you saw the failure of, Russia's been looking for, I guess, a breakthrough in the Ukrainian lines for years, and they finally got their massive breakthrough in Borovsk, and then it's turned into a disaster for them. So any prospect of a swift end to this war, of this being a special military operation, of Kiev folding and falling within a day, that's starting to, I think, leave the Russian psyche at a high level, so that I think they're trying to solve this, or maybe opening a road to a potential, what you could say, a quasi-diplomatic solution. Because, again, if you're the Ukrainians, I think rightfully so, you don't trust the Russians. And if you read the hidden meaning of Lavrov's statements from a Russian perspective, I think, or from a Russian skeptic position, you say, okay, the Russians are trying to make a group, a military alliance, and put soldiers in Ukraine, and the Russian soldiers who will be in control of the Russian and Chinese-led soldiers, well, it would have to fit the Russian standards of non-alignment. And if the Russians get to choose the standard of non-alignment, then that's going to mean pro-Russia. So all this will need to be worked out. What will the Americans do? Will Donald Trump just pressure for any type of deal because he wants to have a deal and a ceasefire because he just likes yelling peace and then there being a ceasefire? Or will there be some, legitimate negotiations? Because I do think you can get the Ukrainians to agree to a ceasefire with some sort of security guarantees, but Ukraine is not going to demilitarize, so that's out of the question. And I think they'll have to diplomatically fend off Russia in their attempt to sort of try and take Donetsk. And if they can do that, and Russia comes to the realization that they're not going to be able to take over all of Ukraine in any reasonable amount of time or without total collapse, then I think you can get some sort of peace settlement. How long will it hold? That is a question. But you could get something that acts as a bit of a glue, and I think that would benefit Ukraine and put them in a position to build up enough of internal fortifications to deter further Russian advance. So I think it's a good sign for Ukraine that the Russians are at least talking about security guarantees for Ukraine, because again, Russia is pretty set on destroying all of Ukraine and taking it over, and there is no Ukraine, and Zelensky isn't legitimate. So this is sort of foreign recognition. Russia, in order to play games, has to foreignly, in the game, recognize Ukrainian nationalism and statehood. So that is massive progress for the Ukrainians internationally.
Thank you very much, Daniel, for joining us today and sharing your insight. Thank you very much. Well, that's all we have time for. We will continue to bring you more news updates from around the world.